move to our next session, which is on the hot topic of GST. So the topic is cost benefit analysis under GST and recent key changes in GST. Our subject matter expert for that is Rajarshi Dasgupta ji, who's an executive director at Aquilaw. Rashi has over 19 years of experience in GST, customs and indirect tax dispute resolution. He has advised several Indian multinational corporations. Most significantly, Rashi has been associated with KPMG, PwC, Sear Tires, and is also an advisor to CREDAI National. Over to you, Rashi ji. We are looking forward to know more about GST and the key changes and the analysis. Over to you.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in this absolute August forum. So instead of wasting much of our time, I just go directly into the topic. So what I thought of covering today is the key changes, which there has been a lot of changes currently in the past year under GST, but I would like to cover only those changes which affects the developers, and it is not the changes that I will primarily cover. I would like to get into those points which will affect the developer, or it will leave a food for thought of what is the next step that they should get into in order to have some more benefit out of the changes, which is number one. And the next part for me is to get into certain discussions of the cost benefit that can be derived out of the GST in today's date, wherein for a developer we do not have an input tax credit benefit in the residential construction, barring commercial construction, wherein still we can have, but in this tough times where the rates are increasing, everything is increasing, how can we tweak something within the framework of law, not violating anything, but still can make out something out of the current applicable laws. So to start off with, on the key amendments. So now the first amendment, which has come in just a few days back, it's a very welcome amendment. It is regarding the refund to unregistered buyers, just to put everybody into the same page. So what used to happen that in case a buyer procuring a property and thereafter cancelling for whatever reasons, so and if that cancellation is happening post a particular period till which the credit note can be issued, which was previously 30th September of the subsequent financial year, which is now extended to 30th November. If the time crosses, the developer generally don't issue the buyer or pay the buyer the relevant GST, saying that I have paid to the government, since no other options are available to me to offset the same, and claiming refund becomes quite a difficult task. So I would not pay you the relevant GST, but I will pay you back the principal amount, whatever is that. Now, in order to safeguard the buyers, so what they have, and the buyers not complaining, getting into unnecessary litigation, so what they have done is they have given an option of refund to the unregistered buyer. Mark my words, unregistered buyer buying property and not getting back the requisite GST if cancelled beyond a particular period of time. Now, here some very relevant question that arises is, what is the relevant date for applying the refund? Now, for this limited purpose, what the authorities have done, they have changed the relevant date to the date of cancellation of the property, so that the date of cancellation is the relevant date for the purpose of claiming refund, and the buyer will have 2 years time from that relevant date. Now, here comes the first catch. The first catch is, let's say, if I have sold the property to a registered buyer, I might have institutional buyer procuring a large number of units from me, or some 7-8 units from me, or one registered buyer, then under such circumstances, such registered buyer cannot claim the refund. It is the developer who needs to claim the refund. That is one. Number two, and for the developer, the relevant date now becomes the date of payment of duty, which is another catch in this entire situation, which means that for the same matter, for the same cancellation, for an unregistered buyer, the relevant date is different. For a registered buyer, when the developer claims, if the relevant date is different. So it becomes a blow hot, blow cold kind of a situation, which currently also the developer can claim such relief by filing an advance ruling. So this is something which becomes very important. Next point is, they have said that the buyer has to receive the payment. What is the meaning of payment? Is payment always means that it has to be in cash, or I can adjust him by giving a property in another project, or is it a book adjustment? So these are the points which needs to be addressed. Next point is, it is a very point that there was a lot of hue and cry on the sale of developed property. There was huge show cause notices, demand notices issued saying that developed plots or lands would attract GST because the war in Schedule 3, it is written only land. Thereafter, there was a clarification issued by way of a circular in the month of August, I guess, which says that sale of developed plot also is covered under Schedule 5, serial number 5 of Schedule 3, which means that it is akin to sale of land, and it is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of service. That is fine. Now, the first question that comes is this amendment prospective or retrospective? Now, in my view, though nothing is being written, since it comes as a clarification, in my view, it seems to be a retrospective amendment, but that needs to be clarified or through an advance ruling or by way of a litigation or through anything. But in my view, this should be a retrospective amendment because it has come as a clarification. Number two, then in case it is retrospective, can I claim a refund? The answer is yes. In case if you have paid the tax, it is within the 2 years period. In case then there is a possibility of claiming refund of the tax paid subject to unjust enrichment. And number three, very, very important point, what should be the treatment? Now you see today's date, whenever you will file a return, in case if you put it under exempt or non-GST supply, these are all my views, there is a very high chance of department issuing a notice saying that you need to reverse your credit to that extent under a particular rule. In my view, if that is neither a supply of goods nor a supply of services, such sale should ideally not form a part of the return, and we need to ideally arrange or make sure that how your returns and those other things needs to be done. So these are ways of planning strategy, how it has to be taken care. The next point is your applicability of GST on liquidated damages, compensation, penalty. Now, there is a very simple point that in certain cases wherein the developer charges some penalty for non for breach of contract or something, or these other things, let's say, or somebody asks me that I cannot construct 20 floors because it might damage or it might close the view of some other things. So he is ideally refraining me from something. Under such circumstances, I might claim some damage and I might claim some compensation. Now, the question that arises, and whether that is chargeable to GST or not, the law clarified no. Now, the buck doesn't stop here. What is important is there are many places where we claim compensation, penalty, something. how we ideally frame the contract, whether that is an independent contract or in relation to some other supply, that ideally needs to be seen, because in many cases wherein now, since our eligibility to credit has reduced drastically, any liability of GST in the hands of the developer becomes a cost. So how do we minimize such cost and claim a particular thing in the form of a liquidated damage or something is 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 completely uh, is completely on the hands of the developer, that how he will frame the contract. This is then another very important change, and this is a change to me. This is, to me, it is a little harsh. Previously, for affordable and some other places, the rate of the works contract was 12%. From July onwards, they have raised that rate to 18%. So, one, it is a complete cost in the hands of the developer, because previously for 1% or whatever, that 12% was a cost which now has increased to 18%. But the catch here is, one, what happens, because in there are cases in the erstwhile notification it was mentioned that in case it has to be more than 50%, and in case if it is less than 50% about affordable, 60 square meter, 90 square meter, 45 lakhs, etc., then the developer has to pay GST under reverse charge for the 6%. Now, when it comes to 18% and it is for a smaller period of time, now while they remove it, then will, even if it does not cross 50%, does the developer for the balance period of time have to pay that reverse charge or not? This becomes the major question that has not been addressed, and we need to ideally make sure of our contracts and everything when we have with the vendors, because now, previously we need to give a declaration. Now those declarations are automatically withdrawn. Then does that mean that the balance amount of GST casts on the contractor, or it still casts on the developer? That needs to be seen in today's date. The next point is this one-third abatement provided under GST law, which the Gujarat High Court says that no, you are not liable for a one-third abatement, because it is very clean and simple, because of the fact that it leads to double taxation, because in cases where the land prices are high and it can be easily identifiable, under such cases, deemed abatement of land primarily is incorrect, because it leads to, because you are paying GST on the same amount, because on the land price you're also paying GST, which ideally under Schedule 3 is not allowed. So now what you need to do, is it that easy that today I write something in the sale agreement and do it? Will the RERA laws allow? Will your municipal act allow? Will your stamp duty allow? Be allowed? These are the points which needs to be looked into before we jump into any conclusion currently when we ideally think of doing it, because currently GST is not the sole thing which we are into. We are into various other laws which governs the entire development, which governs the entire construction, which governs the entire sale. So these are the things which currently needs to be looked into. So this completes my presentation on the key amendments. Now let's get back, now get into finer points on the cost benefit analysis under GST. Now, when we talk of GST, and now with the changes which has come in from 2019, wherein the developers are being tied with no credit, though there is a reduction of rate, but in the hands of the developer, the entire amount for construction of residential property becomes a cost, because I am not entitled to any credit. Now, the question comes that how within the framework of GST, we can primarily work around so that we can have a higher benefit so far as the cost is concerned. Now, I give you certain examples based on whatever work we have done all through. Let's say in today's date, the developers enter into joint development agreements with the landowners. So it might be in the nature of a revenue share or it might be in the nature of area share. Now, so far as area share is concerned, it is primarily an established view with the laws coming in and everything that area share ideally would attract GST in the hands of the developer, in the hands of the landlord, but finally in the hands of the developer under reverse charge. So all these things are there. But so far as revenue share is concerned, so there are various views and a lot of developers when entering into a revenue share arrangement do not pay GST because they feel that there is no ingrained supply between the developer and the landowner. So I am not saying that the entire India does, but in lots of developers takes the view that revenue share arrangement does not attract GST. But under the current scenario, in case what is the difference from GST in GST so far as area share and revenue share is concerned? Now, if I talk strictly from the perspective of a developer, under in an area share, a, a developer gains. So there are various permutation and combinations why. So let's say it depends what is the area or what is the ratio of or what is the cost of the land, how much is the development cost. So in case the developer area or the landowner's area is around 40%, 45%, 50%, and the developer gets into the construction service, under such circumstances, the arrangement the developer might do is tweaking the contract and making it separate contract, one for the construction service so far it relates to the landlord, and one for its own construction to that extent of his area. This is one. Because from the extent of the construction he is rendering to the landlord, he is still entitled to take a credit. So tweaking of a contract and having it two separate contracts with the vendors turns out to be a little profitable. Now, to the extent I am having a contract with, to the extent I am having a contract with the works contractor, to that extent I do it on my part, my area, where I would be selling that area. I would rather think of having an all-inclusive contract, and instead of me supplying the materials, I would ask the vendor supplying the materials. Why? Because under such circumstances, there might be certain wayouts wherein I can have a higher credit because of, in case there is a supply of cement, then the rates in the hands of the vendor or the works contractor, the credit eligibility is more when it in other than the point if I supply. So here how I work around, I would like to have a labor contract separated, because till date, though they have increased the rate, but they have not taken out a exemption in case of simple labor contracts for housing for all or Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Those exemptions they have not taken out. So in case if I have a labor contract, and I might not in, and that for an affordable, I might not land up paying GST at all. Then what would happen to subcontractor? Again, the question comes up, there are advanced ruling which even says that subcontractors are also exempted from such levy. So those things have to be seen. Now, let's say I construct a major club for which I take club membership. I would rather have the construction of the club completely separated because a club membership attracts 18% GST and not 5%, which has credit. So under such circumstances, my eligibility to credit in these places becomes higher. I might have a more cost efficient model in my development. I might have my EDC separate and might claim a credit on the EDC charges, generator charges, installations, and also an EDC in case of I have 18% rate, then simultaneously under such circumstances, I might claim credit. So this is how I might tweak in and work around the contract. A little bit of a contract management may give me a little bit of more savings. Now, another point is lots of people know that we have been still allowed a 20% procurement from unregistered dealer, which means 20% of my procurement of my entire value, if I can properly plan, that is without GST. So under such circumstances, those areas, if can be properly worked around, dealt with, there might be a reduction in the overall GST costs, which currently the developers are having. I'm not saying that nobody is doing it. I think everybody might be doing it, but I thought it just putting it to perspective with the current scenario, because every day the cost is going high and things are really getting difficult for the developers. Last but not the least, planning of input tax credit. First of all, point is for ongoing projects or for commercial projects. When I receive a completion certificate or when it is an occupancy we grant, when the completion certificate comes in, the law says that you are liable to reverse input tax credit. Is it really liable to be reversed? In my view, prior to 2019, such reversal is not at all required. Even post 2019, there is a lot of gray areas in reversal. So can I plan my input tax credit to that extent? Point number two, is it not harsh, or is it that period that my payment that you are just binding me for paying the entire GST in cash, which is ideally not the primary principles under GST? Point number three, when I sell land or I primarily have a plotted arrangement where I am selling bungalows, which includes land as well as the construction, can I go into the situation of sale of land and a separate construction, and for the land and everything, can I not put it in the return and can plan my input tax credit in that way that I can avail the entire thing and not avail the 1/3 benefit, but avail the entire cost of the land? So these are the issues which I thought to put it as a food for thought for everybody, because I didn't want to have a presentation on GST and just bombarding with the laws and everything. So I just thought that what about presentation where we can primarily have a little bit more on the costs and how to save cost within the framework of law. Thank you, everybody. So I leave it open for questions.
Thank you, Rajarshi ji. Over to you, Nikhil, to take forward the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajarshi Dasgupta, for such a wonderful, insightful session on GST.